There is arguably one method that will help you master the guitar quicker and more effectively than any other, and that method is called the C.A.G.E.D system. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the C.A.G.E.D system, show you how it's mapped out on the fretboard, show you how to get your hands into the different positions, and by the end of this video, not only will you be able to play any chord, scale, or arpeggio in 5 different positions, I'll also show you how to bring some fairly common chord progressions to life and play some of your favorite songs in new and interesting ways. I've also created a free downloadable PDF with all of these forms included. So to get that, just click on the link below in the show notes. So how does it work? The C.A.G.E.D system is called the C.A.G.E.D system because it's made up of 5 different positions that cover the entire fretboard. Now they're called those particular forms because of the shape they're derived from. So the C form is derived from this C chord that we know in open position. The A form comes from the A chord that we know here, moved up. The G form is derived from this G chord that we know in open position. And if you imagine that this finger here behind the nut is creating the form, when we slide it up, we get that. The E form, again, is based on a chord that we have in open position. That E major chord, if we slide up here and again put a bar across the relevant fret, we get that shape. So there's the E form slid up with the C note being hit. And finally, we have D form, because it's derived from the D major chord in this position, slid all the way up, and we have a bass note put, in this case, on the D string. So there are our forms: C form, A form, G form, E form, and D form. Now, while there are 5 forms, there's a really easy way to get your head around how these forms connect together. And the easiest way, I think, to do it is to look at some of the common root notes that they share. So we can look at the C and the A form and see that they're both based off this root note here. So if this is the root note, we can see that C form spreads out that way from the root note and A form hangs down off the root note. But they're really sharing that root note. So that really helps us see how they connect together. So if we take the C note now on the 6th string, 8th fret, we can see that the G form comes off the top of that note. We take the same root note and have the E form coming off the bottom or coming off to the side of that note. And then by finding the octave, which is 2 frets up and 2 strings across, we have the D form. So really you can see the C and the A form as being connected because they're based off the same root note. And then you can see the G and the E form as being related because they come off the same root note, with the D form hanging off the octave under E form. You can also see that the D form and the C form actually overlap and they interlock. And they do this because the forms of the C.A.G.E.D system cover 12 frets of the neck before repeating. And so by the time we get to the bottom of D form, that little triangle shape overlaps with the top of C form and the whole pattern starts again. So one of the things that makes this system so powerful is it allows us to play lots of different chords in the same position on the neck. And it's not that we're lazy or don't want to move our hand, it's that we want to get different chord voicings to make the chord progression sound interesting. And what I mean by that is, if we're just playing the same form of each chord, it can sound a little bit stale or it can sound a little bit boring. So if we take this form here as a C chord and play up to D minor and then up to E minor, I'm playing all of these chords in A form, F and G. And so we're using the same voicings all the way up, which doesn't always sound great. What we can do with the C.A.G.E.D system is now play through the diatonic system and play all of the chords essentially in the same position. So I'll show you what that would look like. So here is the C chord starting in A form. D minor or D minor 7. E minor. F major 7. G major. A minor. B diminished. And C. So again, all of those chords were played really in this position between the 3rd and the 5th fret, and you get these lovely different textures and sound within the chords. So if we take just a basic 1-4-5 progression, you can see it moving through these different forms. C, F, G. If we move up to the next position, C, F, G. Move up to the next position, C, F, G. Next position, C, F, G. And finally, C, F, G. Another really big advantage of this system is that it just gives us more ways to play the one chord, and it gives us more tonal variation with each chord. So for example, the C chord here in open position, C form, it's rich, it's resonant, it's using some open strings. The C chord here, or the C chord here, it's a totally different kind of sound. It's higher in register, it's using a bar chord form, it's slightly less resonant, and sometimes that's what we want. We want that kind of muted sound. So it just gives you more tonal variation and more options, instead of always needing to play your chords the one way. And where this becomes really advantageous from a songwriting and a performance point of view is in the ability to create contrast between your sections, even if the chords don't change. So you could use exactly the same 4 chords throughout an entire song, but use different positions to play those chords or different forms of those chords to create the contrast. And an example might be the Eagle Eye Cherry song, Save Tonight. So in that song, we have the same 4 chords all the way through the song. We have an A minor to an F, to a C to a G. And so to create contrast, we could play the verses up with higher forms to create that tighter, more closed off sound. And then in the chorus, open it up with some of the lower position chords and use some of those open strings and utilize the other forms down there. 3, 4, and... So you can hear how tight that is. And we're using some higher pitched chords. Chorus. And you can hear the contrast there, and you can hear how it opens up the song and allows us to distinguish between the 2 different sections, and yet it's still the same 4 chords. Another great way to use the C.A.G.E.D system is to turn a static chord into something far more interesting, or to create movement within that static chord. So sometimes we have to stay on one chord for a period of time, and this method allows us to really create some motion. You know, if you're playing something in the style of, say, James Brown, you might be staying on that chord for a long time, and this is what that would sound like. Now we can actually start to add some motion to that by picking some different shapes from those other forms. So we've got that shape there, which is in A form. It's really kind of it's a hybrid between C form and A form, but you can see where that's coming from. If we pick this shape here, which is actually in G form, already that gives us some movement. And you can hear what happens. We start getting these little melodies on top. If we add another G form chord, that one there, we can do this. And then if we keep going, we can add other forms. So we could add this form here, which is really the D form, and I'm playing a dominant version. And we can, of course, add our E form here. 3, 4. So you can hear that that's all the same chord. That's all C7 or C dominant. And I'm using variations of a C9 or a C7 or sometimes a C13. But it's really just all C dominant laid out across the neck and utilizing those 5 caged forms. Now, as for melodies and arpeggios and improvised solos, this cage system is amazingly useful because what it does is it allows us to break out of box playing. So for guitarists, we often get used to a particular position and we get stuck in that position because of muscle memory. So that's going across the neck, that's box playing. What we can start to do is move between these forms and create more of a linear approach up and down the neck, as well as box playing. And so it would sound something like this if we were just improvising freely. And this is really liberating when you're writing melodies or improvising because it allows you to see the whole neck as really the one scale. So when we're up here, you know, we're seeing that D form laid out there. If we wanted to move down linearly, we could on that E string and end up in A form. Or we could stop halfway down and utilize E form. So there you have the C.A.G.E.D system, a powerful method for learning and mastering the guitar, and without question, something all songwriters should have in their toolkit. Happy songwriting.